a study by Harvard and McLean Hospital that when children and parents are having communication, what they discovered is that 21% of the time they found that mental clarity increased, and 24% of the time emotional overreaction decreased.
Yeah.
I thought it would be like the total opposite of that.
As children, we hear our parents keep telling us, do this, don't do that, keep things like this, keep things like that. And we believe that actually that messes our brain up. But the research interestingly says that our focus increases and our emotional overreaction decreases over a period of time.
What is a good way to look at your parents?
I think what parents need to understand is this, that your need for control get mixed up with your need to express love. And then you don't even know whether that's control or love.
In the family dynamics, do you find that people don't want to change?
So I never work with one individual at a time, because when you're in a family, if one person is suffering, everybody else suffers. I thought I knew my wife, but I didn't. I had worked with so many clients, so I used those tools with my wife, with her consent, of course. And then I realized that, boy, she's very different than who I thought she was. 15 years in the marriage. And then I figured out who she was. Life becomes easier. If you go into the spiritual text, the word used there is Ananta Virya Kabal, means unlimited potential. But to access that, you need to have a mindset like that.
In today's episode of Desi Wisdom, we are joined by Rahul Kapoor, one of India's leading family mindset coaches and a top motivational speaker who has helped hundreds of families understand and improve their relationships and family dynamics, working through some of the most complex situations. Rahul blends psychology, science, and spirituality to help families come home to themselves and each other. In this powerful conversation, Rahul reveals one of the biggest reasons why families drift apart, why relationships within families break down, and why so many children slowly distance themselves from their parents. If you're looking for answers to the most difficult questions about your family, this episode is a must-watch. So I just want to say thank you so much for being on the podcast, Desi Wisdom. I'm so excited to have you. I saw you speak on a big stage many years ago at Jaina in the US, and you had captured the audience and they were with you every step of the way, and the way that you delivered was just magical. So I'm just excited to have you here. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm excited as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Rahulji, you have been working with families for over 2 decades. And I'm really curious, what got you into the family work?
Actually, 5 decades, because my existence itself got me into family work.
Yes, that's true. 5 decades.
Yeah, I'm turning 50 next year.
Even nonverbal, right?
It really is, because I think the moment you take birth, I think you are in that ecosystem, knowingly or unknowingly, because in the vibrational world, so you can experience all of that. But yeah, 20 years more specifically, because I've been working with people to help them discover the beauty of this entire ecosystem that we call family, Family. When you expand that, it says, Father and Mother, I love you, Family. It's so beautiful. But so I've always been in a joint family. We've lived with 36 people under one roof. My
36?
Dad, 36 people for many years. So I've seen the dynamics. I've been a very curious person, very aware of what happens in emotions. So while I was young, I used to really observe the dynamics of what goes right, what goes wrong, with so many cousins living together, so many uncles and aunts. So I think it just came to me naturally, I guess. And when it was time for me to work with people, it was just a natural extension. What I saw was missing in that, under that roof where I lived. And I wish I could do something for people, and I couldn't because I was too young. I didn't have the maturity to handle all that. But when I could do that, when I found the opportunity to do that with my work, it was just God's gift to me and all those that I work with.
And you've worked with families from all over the world, right? Mm-hmm. And so what do you see as sort of the similarities of the kinds of problems that get presented to you?
See, families are families. It doesn't really matter where they really are located geographically, right? Because we are finally talking about human emotions. Yeah. So when two people come together, or more than two people come together, there are emotions, and emotions have their own challenges. So what do you want to know? The good things or the bad things that I notice in families?
Both.
The good thing is that everybody is out there to experience love. Everybody experiences love, security, safety. but very few of them acknowledge it. And then they keep asking for more of it. And in the quest to ask more, they blame each other and they point fingers and they become judgmental and they suffer. So the funny thing is that what you are seeking already exists. You don't acknowledge that, so you suffer. And then you keep the quest to keep looking for more of what you already have. So I think that's a universal phenomena. It's existed from times immemorial, whether it's Ramayana or Mahabharata or anything that you can talk about. It's all about family and relationships, isn't that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, the only thing perhaps changes is the cultural context. For example, when you're working in America, you might see that there are more independent families there. Of course, Indian families, but in America, because of the cultural context. So it's a little different in terms of dynamics. In India, you will see that families are going the same way as America, but not as rapidly. We still do have joint families, or even if people are living separately, they're closer than I've seen them in America. And since I work more with Indian families at this point in time, whether it's in Australia or whether it's in UAE, I still feel that the challenges remain the same. And the quest is still the same. I want to be happy. I want to love you. I want to express my love. I want to feel love. But in all of that, I think there is a missing link, not in reality, but I think in the perception, which causes more problem.
Yeah. I mean, when you were talking about even just being under the same roof with 36 people, right? The amount of dynamics you must have seen is like everything under the one roof, literally, right? Because even when I was younger, it was just me, my brother, my parents, that was it. And even in that small dynamic, there was so much that I witnessed that actually put me down a similar path of wanting to work with families, you know? So I love that. So what is it that you think is that missing piece that you just spoke about? What is that piece that you're talking about?
I think awareness and being present. When I say awareness, is just that if you're not aware of how lucky we are at this point in time, that we are alive, all our body organs are functioning properly, we have food on our plate, we have a roof on our head. There's just so much that we have. Like our life is so filled with abundance, but we're not aware. And therefore, in the lack of that awareness, you create all the suffering, you create lack in your brain, you experience the lack in real life, and you try to chase and do things to make up for that lack. But it's just an illusion. You're just chasing the wrong thing because it's all that you want is already there.
Yeah, and how do you help people like kind of come to that awareness? Because it is hard, right? There's this disconnect that happens for all of us. Like you're mentioning, you know, you want that love, it's already there, but you still think it's not, you know?
Yeah.
So how do we connect back into that? It's already there.
Yeah. So for example, if I were to ask you whether I have a chain around my neck, what would your answer be?
If you have one on right now?
Yeah.
No.
You don't. Whether I have one or two?
None.
So look, you do not know until and unless I make an effort to stretch a little, and you can see there are two. So somebody has to stretch, but where the stretch happens? It happens here. And that awareness can get created when you're present to everything that you do. It starts from the self. You cannot expect that things going to change from that side. It has to change from this side. And that's really what spiritual world is all about. It's a very beautiful word, which is swapar. It's, of course, in the context of swa as in self, which is the soul, par as in the body. So the spiritual world suggests that what's yours is the soul and what's not yours is the body, and therefore have no attachment. But when I relooked at that word from a context of leadership, as in leading yourself in families and otherwise, the work begins with self. Like Buddha, for example, or Mahavira, for example, they all worked on themselves first. When you work on yourself, you become capable. And that's where awareness and presence comes into picture. And when you are in that zone, that's when you become capable to help other people. And I think that's really how you need to work with families. You need to work with yourself first.
When you're working with families, how do you help them get present to one another? Is there like a way that you do that?
Yeah, it's a tough job. Well, I've worked with the world's most complex problems. If you were to, if I were to define it that way, what people cannot solve or resolve for 30, 40, 50 years sometimes, I'm so grateful to the universe that it has blessed me with the tools and techniques to help people to resolve that in 3 to 6 months sometimes. The way it really works is that you need to create the combination of science, psychology, and spirituality, I do that. Till you don't understand the psychology of the person, don't understand how the person's brain is wired from the person's beliefs, values, past experiences, and old memories. If I was too fast, let me just repeat that again. That's beliefs, values, past experiences, and memories. That really forms a person's personality. So you need to understand the personality and then the behaviors that the person picks up. And unless we don't get an access into that, we can't solve anything anyway. You can counsel a person, you can mentor a person, you can have a chat with a person and give them a pep talk, but then real work doesn't happen unless you access the brain deep inside, and from there all the dynamics begin to play. So my job is to basically understand not just one person, but to understand all of the people who are members of that family. And then what I do is I do this cross analysis of compatibility to understand where the real problems are. So when I'm talking about you, for example, you look at yourself as Kavita, but I would look at you in terms of your behaviors as who you are in reality. What is your mask when you're with people? And how do you behave under extreme pressure? So there's one Kavita, but there are three behaviors of that Kavita. Now, when this Kavita is interacting with, let's say, your husband, for example, so there are three more here. Then your daughter, there's another three more there. So you are in that real complex world of human emotions. And in that, there are so many other layers, like I just explained to you. Now, you need to get a grip of all of that to be able to understand that person. Let's presume you get that right. But then there's still so much more that's happening in terms of the spiritual world. So what is it that you carried forward, and what is it that you're dealing with, and what is it that you're going to leave behind? So you really need to get the understanding of all this, have pure intentions, and this work has to be something that you're really made for, not what you've been trained for. And I think that's when the emotions flow. You get into the vibrational world of people, and then you bring about shift and change. And I'm so grateful that I can do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think just even when you said mask, like what is your mask? Like can you walk me through what my mask might be?
Nobody can actually do that because what I can do is I can only make assumptions. Mm-hmm. And that's really where family dynamics gets really messed up, because we're all making assumptions. Yeah, I see you do something. I see you an expression. I hear your words. I see a gesture. I make assumptions. Yeah. And I believe that's you. But that's not really who you are. And nobody can judge anybody. Nobody can make assumptions, because assumptions is the mother of all mess ups. Let me give you a personal example. So I thought I knew my wife very well because I was married to her for so many years. But if you look at I'm not sure that this camera can capture this, you'll actually see there are marks over here. There are stitches. I had 3 stitches here. My wife had 5 on her hand. We used to fight with each other so much because we felt we were just not compatible in this marriage. And I would make assumptions about her. She would make about me. And until I got these stitches and I got into that phase to understand that, hey, I understand family. I really understand the dynamics, but marriage, well, that was a different piece. I was never in marriage to understand marriage. But then to be so down in pain and then start seeking responses and answers, I think that's magical, right? And that's when I understood that I thought I knew my wife, but I didn't. And I think the tools that I work with, I had worked with so many clients. So I used those tools with my wife, with her consent, of course. And then I realized that, boy, she's very different than who I thought she was. 15 years in the marriage. And then I figured out who she was. Life becomes easier. I'm not saying that it solves all the problem, but at least you're aware and you're present to who the other person is. And that awareness is knowledge. Samyak darshan gyan charitrani moksha marga in terms of spiritual world. Yeah. But in terms of reality...
Explain that.
So it is samyak darshan, as in the ability to see the path, then the gyan, which is the knowledge to walk on that path, and then the charitra, which is actually taking the action. So at least you should know what you're looking for. Once you know, okay, this is what I'm looking for, then you get the knowledge for it, and then you walk on that path, which is the toughest part, of course, because most of us know what's the right thing to do, but we don't do.
Yeah. What's the what is the brain chemistry of that? We know what to do, but we don't do it.
Yeah, it's a complex subject, and because I work with so many people, I understand why some people take so long to get there. Before I answer the question, so the work that I do is with the entire ecosystem. So I never work with one individual at a time, because when you're in a family, if one person is suffering, everybody else suffers.
Yes.
And we say, fix this person. You can never fix anybody. And what's there to fix? You fix a machine, not human beings. I think we need to help people resolve themselves. And when we do this together in that ecosystem, that's when the magic begins. So, I was trying to say is that we need to understand the science, the psychology, and the spiritual aspect. Now, what you're asking me is about what happens in the brain, which is the psychological aspect of the whole thing. So complex as it can be, we are wired in our brain. But let's say if I'm talking about somebody willing to take the first step to move forward, willing versus somebody not willing to. So why is it that it works that way? So we can talk about it at the brain wave level. We can talk about it from a chemical perspective level. We can talk about it from a perspective of your fears. So you tell me what you want to explore in this conversation, and we'll do that.
At psychological level. What's happening?
All of this is psychology.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say you want to talk about the chemical, for example.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. This is mind-blowing stuff, actually. So why don't people take actions? That was your original question, right? I'll give you a variety of reasons why. And some which most people they're not even present to it, that's the problem. So for example, let's look at it from a perspective of chemical, let's say dopamine. So we know that we release dopamine when we have a desire to do something. So you set a goal, and the dopamine is it's initiated in the brain, it's releasing. You take a step, it gets, it releases more of it. So with the thought itself, you're releasing dopamine. And then because the dopamine is there and you feel comfortable, so even if you don't take action, you're still in the comfort zone. You feel good. And then you keep doing that over and over again. So you're getting the dose of dopamine that you want, which is just through thoughts, not through actions.
Just through thoughts.
How cool is that?
Wow.
So now what we need is a follow-up and follow through actions. So now the question is, why don't we get into actions? What stops human beings from doing that? So I have this 3-layered mindset, or not 3 layers, but 3 types of mindsets. They can get into layers again. So one is a negative mindset. Something's not working, you're not taking action, so you blame yourself, you become negative, and you always keep cribbing and saying, oh, I'm not worth it, I'm not good enough, I procrastinate, I can't get results done, my kundli is bad, my life is bad, my karma is bad. And a lot of us are like that, right? In so many aspects of our life.
Yeah.
And then there are other positive people. We've been trained to say that in life we must be positive. Mm-hmm. So that entire theory of being positive is good, because you know what? It makes you look at things from a perspective which is different than the negative person, right? You don't kind of beat yourself down, and you don't create the stress hormones in your body all the time. So you kind of take it easy. And all of that. Huh?
You suppress a lot.
No, we don't know whether we suppress, because we've been told that positive people are actually happier. What's the problem? The problem is positive people know they have a certain ability to do a certain job, and they do it and they're fine. So if somebody is fat and I say, hey, do you have an opportunity, or do you have the possibility of becoming fitter? They'll say, yeah, I want to. Did you try? Yes, I did. But what happened? No, not consistent. Why? Because I'm busy with work and this and that. But I'm still happy with the way I am. At least I make efforts. Now that's the trap. So your brain kind of convinces you that, hey, your intentions are good, and it helps you to judge yourself through your intentions, not through your actions.
Got it. And that's where you get the dopamine hit, is just by that thought?
That's one of the elements. I wanted to keep that thought. Okay. But remember, you're judging yourself with your intentions, not actions, but you're judging the other person in the family with their actions, not their intentions.
Yes.
So my intention is to be good, whether I'm good or not, doesn't matter. My brain convinces me because I'm positive that, hey, I'm good. But when I look at you, I'm not judging you with your intention that you want to be good. I'm only judging you from the actions that you're taking. So that's the conflict zone. So the question is, now where is the real crux of the matter? How do you get into action zone? Being unstoppable. Now, that's one of the philosophies that I am working with. I thrive on that. My life is transformed. I'm helping others do that as well. But just think about it. Being unstoppable means that nothing in the world can stop you. If you desire something, you just get there. You want something, you achieve it. So how do you do that? Now, to be unstoppable, let's say in the context of fitness. So you want to be fit. That means to say you have to show up somewhere, either in the gym or a yoga class or a swimming pool or cycling someplace.
Yeah.
And you got to show up consistently. and you have to make sure that your body is doing. You're giving your mind and body everything that it needs, which is the right nutrition, the right recovery. Yeah, which means to say that you're constantly investing in that process day after day after day after day after day, without a deadline in mind, because it has to be a lifestyle. But most people create a goal and they want to chase the goal and they don't get the results and they give up.
Right.
So now you go back to positive mindset from being unstoppable. Oh, I did try. Or some go into negative mindset. Oh, nothing's going to change my life. So basically these three are playing in some amazing dynamics, which determines our lives, which also plays exactly with the same wiring of the three. We take this into family context, and the same things happen.
Say the three again, because you said negative, positive,
and the unstoppable.
And the unstoppable.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do I mean by saying unstoppable? If you go into the spiritual text, the word used there is Anantavirya Kabal, means unlimited potential. But to access that, you need to have a mindset like that. To have the mindset like that, you need to have a commitment like that. To have the commitment like that, you need to have awareness, presence, and go. You've got to keep moving on in that loop. So most of us are not trained to be in that loop. We've been trained to be in the positive loop. And the positive loop is great, but it creates comfort zone. You don't challenge your fears. You stay in pain. You want pleasure. You don't get there. Life is a quest. You live, you die. We all suffer.
Yeah. It's suffering. But yeah, so kind of, I'm taking what you just said and connecting it back to the assumptions, right? Because within families, you're saying that you're just seeing so many people making so many assumptions in that space. And they don't know that they're doing that. And you use the example of you and your wife even. And I do it with my husband all the time. Yeah. I agree with you. I've been married for 18 years. And even now to this day, I will have conversations with him and I'm like, that's how you think about it? Or that's how you related to it? I had no idea, right? Yeah. No idea. And so just even understanding the level of assuming that we do is makes a big change even.
It's huge. It's really huge. So the way I function with people is this, that my sessions are structured where people do 3 days of work with me together as a family. And with the tools that we use, we help them to see themselves in reality, who they are. And in having given them that access, that's when you create breakthroughs. But you're not done, because still you don't do the work with the person, like the assumption piece that we spoke about. It's deeply rooted from your beliefs, your values, your old memories, and your past experiences. So you have to help the person access that. Could be from childhood memories, we don't know. Could be from memory that took place a few years ago. And then to bring all these dynamics together and resolve a problem, that's where family contexts become so complex, so difficult, and yet so fulfilling when you get the results.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fulfilling to see the connections get formed again, and they're listening and hearing one another. So to kind of come back to, so I'm adding in assumptions, and then, in the family dynamics, do you find that people don't want to change? So like, let's just say, because we're using this example of why don't we want to be in action in a specific way, right? So I'm just going to use the example of like an adult child comes to the table, right? And says, oh, like to the mom, you hurt me so much because you did X, Y, Z, or you constantly tell me this. Or maybe they say nothing and they just shut down and relate to their parents from a shut down place, right? So there's a lot of pain underlying all of that, right? So what I've seen typically is like when a child does that, the parents get defensive typically, right? And so how do you get them to start to take action in a different way? Or is that part of sort of the healing process or the reconnection process?
So there are two elements of your conversation. One is that why people don't change or why they don't want to change. And the second is, again, the example of how you're going to work with a child. So let's kind of address this change piece, because I think it's very important for our viewers as well to understand what's happening. So again, are you coming from the intentions or are you coming from actions? So you say, I want to come from action, but my intentions are stopping me somewhere. Or let's say I have the intention, have the action, but yet something is missing. So what's that missing? What's that element that's missing? So when you work with families, you realize that sometimes in a family of 4, before I come in, there would have been 3 people who would have gone through for some kind of therapy, not gotten the result, and get me to work with them, and I get to see that those three never needed therapy in the first place. It was the other person who needed it, and the person doesn't even acknowledge it. And that's why everybody else is in a need to seek help from outside. So that's why I said the ecosystem matters. But what happens in this person's brain who's suffering the most is that there could be so many different aspects to it we do not know, right? So one of them could be that they're going through their internal fears, or they have the fear of being exposed, that, hey, if I go through a conversation and something about me comes up, not in front of other people, but even if I acknowledge it myself, people don't like to acknowledge their own weaknesses or their own dark side, which is such a huge subject. Yeah. Or sometimes people have this thought process that, hey, I'll fix it myself, I don't need help. So all these things basically stops you from taking the step towards change. Transformation is a big subject. Transformation happens when you actually are ready and you take action. That's when transformation takes place. You transform. You don't change, because change can happen this way and that. Transformation is like it just stays. For example, if I give you a piece of ice cube, what happens? It's an ice cube, but if I heat it, you get water. But I cool it, you get an ice cube back. But let's say, so that's change. Okay, it moves this way and that. But if I give you uncooked rice and then you cook it, it's cooked. You can't uncook it again, right? So that's how transformation needs to take place in families. Now, what you're talking about in the second element is children, and an example of kids coming and they're experiencing.
And when I say children, I mean like adult children, not like,
let's say teenagers or young adults.
It could be like 20 and up.
Yeah. So you see, you need to understand this, that, so let me help you understand what happens to children when they're 0 to 9. Their identity is with their parents. They don't make choices or decisions, parents make. From 9 to 13, they're just opening themselves up, understanding that a world exists beyond parents. 13 onwards, now they're teenagers. The 13 to 19, they're exploring, rebellious, they want to know things. So they are with parents for the need of security, but they're also, slowly trying to understand how the dynamics will work with, being with other people. So they try making friends, and you must have seen that. You make friends, you break friends, you don't know who's good for you, who's not good for you. But by the time you get into 2021, your personality is almost formed, right? So now it's you and your identity. And that's very different than your parents' identity. Yes. So for you, you've grown, but for your parents, you're still their child, not a young adult. So they have not, and I really would love our audience to understand this, that if you're a parent watching this, you need to understand this, that the child is growing. You're also growing, but you're not present to the thought that your role needs to change as well. From being a protective parent to being a friend, to being a friend who actually allows that young adult to experience world, to walk, to fall, to get hurt, to seek for support, and this entire journey, because that's his life. He's in this world to experience this. But parents, in their need for, in their excessive need to support the child and to make sure the child is happy, they try and enforce upon them their views, their approaches of doing things. And in a way, they're trying to curtail the independent growth of the child, not knowing that they're doing it. It's just happening, right? And therefore, they suffer because the child is not listening anyway. Not the child, the young adult in your case, in this discussion. And the child is suffering. Hey, don't you understand? It's my life. Let me just be. And we are just supposed to be. But we do so much. I keep saying, you do. You feel like you're doing all the time. Chill. You got to just be. And allow the universe to just do what it wants to do for you so that you can be. But you interfere with the universe's doing, which interferes into your being. And I think that's where the complexities begin. And when I say that, what I mean is this, that you're supposed to be in the nature of who you are, which is a parent, for example. So you say, hey, I'm in my nature, I'm protecting my child. But you need to understand, the nature of a seed is to convert into a plant and then give you fruits. And that's how you're supposed to be, right? You've done the part of sowing the seed. You've done the part of, giving it water. Now allow it, have trust, have faith, and let the child be.
Yeah. And what resistance do you get from parents? Because even, I have a 7-year-old, and I'll have a lot of anxiety if he gets sick because he has asthma, And so when it's about the breath, right? It's just anxiety inducing. And anytime I get that anxiety, he picks up on it just like that, right? And he's just like, he looks at me, he's like, you're doing that again. You're doing that anxious thing again. And then I'm sitting there saying, and telling him even like, I'm doing that because I'm worried, right? So I'm almost like reinforcing my own way of being with him. And he's asking me to change, right? He's saying, can you not be so anxious, right? So when you get this like pushback from parents, what do you start to say to them?
So you need to understand that there will be, if there are 10 people, there'll be 10 different reactions. So where do reactions come from? It's reaction. So you need to understand that the reaction versus a response are two different things. When we react, we come from a certain part of the brain, which is driven by amygdala, right? So it's called amygdala hijack. You suddenly get into the stress response, and anxiety, for example, anger, for example, comes from there. Not because you don't love your children, not because you don't know how to regulate your emotion, but it's just that it's instinctive, right? It just happens, which is fine because that's the job of the brain. But the job of us as human beings is to be able to understand that we are larger than the brain and we can control the brain. So you have to move that thought process from your amygdala to your neocortex, which is the logical thinking process. So how quickly can you come back to that is really what the entire quest of meditation is, or at least the first level of meditation, right? So you learn how not to react, but to respond. Most people don't have access into their brain. So they behave in a certain way, which is instinctive, but they call it, that's my nature. That's all parents' nature. It's not your nature. Your nature is to be peaceful. You've trained yourself not to be. And therefore you are reactive. Then you get into that habit and you believe that's you. And even though it's not you, your belief is so strong that you believe in the lie to be true, which is stupid, right?
It's like a cycle.
Yeah. So I think what parents need to do is they need to first get a hold on themselves. So it's and that's what I promote in my conversations, that you can't solve all your problems just by making your brain work. Sometimes you want to do exactly the opposite. You have to sit in silence and solitude. That's when you're going to access the real you, and that's where the whole family thrives. So coming back to the point that if a parent behaves like that, then what? And what does the child say? So look, the child has his own experiences, beliefs, values, past experiences, memories. So the parents also need to understand that as much as I'm talking about what you need to do, you also need to understand what you do and why you do what you do. So then I'm going to take you back to your childhood and figure out, how was your childhood? How were your parents? When did anxiety first appear in your life? What does anxiety do to you? Do you feel more protective? Do you feel that it's safe for you? Do you feel that it's going to help you solve problems? Has it happened in the past? So it's easier said than done. There's some deep work has to happen for us to actually gain access into it. So it's easy for us to talk and for people to listen, but in reality, when it has to happen, it needs a lot of learning and unlearning, coaching and recoaching to actually be in that space. So a long answer to your short question, but there's so many dynamics which are working, in making things how they are.
I hope you love this episode of Desi Wisdom. Please leave a comment below telling me if you liked it, if you didn't like it, what you would have wanted more of. It really helps me refine this podcast to give you exactly what you want. I will be reading every comment and responding. And I think I'm really like, what you're really sharing is that there is a lot of unlearning, unconditioning that needs to occur. Yeah. And with the parents, often, we'll get to the child in just a second, but like with the parents, I often feel like they'll resist, right? They'll resist. Like I've asked questions like in my own work, like, okay, where were the anxieties or fears that you experienced in your childhood? Oh, I was fine. My parents were great. I mean, we just did what they told us to do. That's like the normal thing that I often hear. They don't want to go deeper. It's painful for them to go deeper. Even when I'm, conversing with my own family members, it's painful to go deeper. Like my family will always say to me, like, why do you keep asking why? There's no why behind this. There's no why. It's just this, And so how do you get them beyond that?
By not asking them why questions. Because the moment you ask a why, people take it as an attack. they start defending themselves. Now, the why questions, when it comes to why I exist, purpose of life, vision of life, that's good there, but not here in relationships. And especially when you're doing deep work. So you can change this question to what made you, then things begin to actually unveil in front of you. So it's very
Subtle.
sensitive, very subtle. You really need to connect with human beings, which is why I see a lot of people who are certified coaches. They get to where they need to, but I've seen deep change doesn't happen because you were certified. Deep changes happen when you can actually connect with people at vibrational level, at frequency level. That's where I think transformation takes place.
Yeah, I think even when you ask the why question with a different energy, if you work on the energy of the way that you say it, then it lands differently. But if you have this angst with the why, then the defensiveness will definitely come
so you
up.
see, our intentions to ask is perfectly fine. But remember, the person who's receiving it, their layers in the brain, the filtering process, that's where the concern happens. But yeah, I agree with you that if you ask it with certain presence of mind and certain intentions, you may still get some good responses.
Yeah. Okay, so then let's talk for a moment about sort of the child, because
you mean the young adult?
Young adult, yeah.
I love that.
I just call everybody child, whether you're 30, 40, or 50. Like,
That's
I feel like we're all
mother.
children.
You're a mother, right?
We're all children. But yeah, so what I often see is that people shut down a lot, right? Especially children with their parents. Okay, if my mom tells me one more time to wear a sweater and it's cold outside, or you want to make your rotis this way, not this way, right? There's all this like frustration that erupts inside of us, right? And my tendency is also shut down at times. Sometimes my tendency is to scream, right? So what is a good way to look at your parents and orient towards your parents?
Let me speak from a parent's perspective first before I speak from the youth or the youngsters' perspective. I think what parents need to understand is this, that your need for control get mixed up with your need to express love. And then you don't even know whether that's control or love. Like your child goes into the kitchen to cook food and she's not as good as you are because you've been doing this for 20 years. So she's going to be messy. She's going to dirty the kitchen. She might break a few things. She might go wrong. The food may go bad. So what do you do as a mother or as a father? Are you going to look at all of these as experiences? And it's okay to know that, okay, she might make a mistake. It's all right. And it's all right for her to make a mistake. You might just give a nudge, give a little input and step back. And then it's okay to see the child go through those mistakes, because then their brain gets a message that, oh, I goofed up here. And then they look at you and say, ow, why did I go wrong? And they say, hey, this is why you went wrong. And then you help them out. So they perceive it better. Why? Because when they ask questions, dopamine release takes place. When they're trying something new, endorphin.
When children, when you ask your parents something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Curiosity develops dopamine. I told you that. But when you start correcting them, they're learning. So what does it do? Exactly the opposite. You create stress. So adrenaline kind of kicks in and you feel anxious. You don't enjoy the job. And then what do? You shut down and you shut down and you shut down. I'm giving an example of cooking. You put this into 10 of the examples. The child doesn't keep the room clean. The child comes home late, on the mobile phone for too long. I mean, that's what we look at, right? We don't look at all the good things that the children are doing.
Yeah.
We look at all the things they're not doing right. And look, you've done this, I've done this. Of course, we had different tools in which we messed up. We experimented and we messed up and we learned and we grew. Yeah. They're doing it with their own context of life. I think parents need to understand, be present to that you can give your children values. That's the best thing you can do. But experiences, let them have. You can be a protective layer, you can guide them through, but be prepared for them to fail. And that's why your role as a parent becomes even more important. I do that with my children all the time. There's so many examples I can quote. But that's how you develop a great bond with your child. Your question was, why do children drift away from parents? They don't suddenly drift away. It's a series of experiences. One day it might just blow off and they say, okay, this is it, I've had it. So parents recall that, but I say, hang on, that's just like the last straw on the camel's back. Go back and see what all you've done wrong. And then you kind of understand. But even then parents, they justify, I did this because I did this because I did that because. Who cares? What's the reality? That you are not connected with your child. Your child doesn't feel good with you. And that's not success. That's failure for you. And you can keep going, oh, I took care of my child 9 months in the womb. That's for the years. Do I deserve all this? I mean, wrong question, simply because you're not in the state of awareness. Because when you're aware, you don't ask such questions. Because when you're aware, you don't make such mistakes. So you need to be present. You need to allow the child to grow. Be there. Be with them.
Yeah, and I think like that's one of the hardest things for parents to do, to be really present with their children, you know, and let them fall.
Yeah, because see, parents are not growing, right? Children are going to school. They're having so many experiences. They go through training programs. They have different exposures, so they know that they're going through a certain amount of learning process, which is so quick, so fast, so rapid. But as parents, we are at home doing the same thing, at job doing the same thing. We believe we are growing, but honestly speaking, our speed of learning is just so slow. We don't even catch up with them. So, which is why I think when you can't catch up with them, then that's when the gap is created, which you call the generation gap.
Yeah, the generation gap gets bigger. Yeah, and the communication gets harder. Well, you had cited in one of your videos a study by Harvard and McLean Hospital that they did around when children and parents are having communication. And when they have this communication, what they discovered is that 21% of the time they found that mental clarity increased, and 24% of the time emotional overreaction decreased.
Yeah.
When you cited that, it blew my mind, actually, because I thought it would be like the total opposite of that. You know?
You're talking more in context of when we feel parents are nagging.
Yeah.
So in that case, mental clarity should go for a toss, and you will start doing more overthinking than what the study suggests. That's what you're referring to, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's a very interesting study, and I really love it. So what our audience needs to understand in terms of the context is this, that now let's go to the perspective of the children now, right?
Yeah.
So as children, we hear our parents, or young adults for that matter, we hear our parents keep telling us, do this, don't do that, keep things like this, keep things like that. And we believe that actually that messes our brain up. But the research interestingly says that our focus increases and our overreaction, emotional overreaction decreases over a period of time, and we get more results. And that's true for a lot of people, provided the parents have done it in the right way. That is, you remind the child. Obviously, children will take a long time before they do it. If I ask you 2 ones are, you will say 2. 2 twos are?
2.
2 twos are 4.
4. Oh, yeah. 2 times 4.
Yeah.
Okay, 2
4
times 2.
twos are?
8.
8 twos are?
Wait, 16.
16.5 into 7.3
I'm not great at math.
You can't, right? Because you're not,
even if it's basic.
yeah, we're not trained, right? 16.5 into 17.3. Our brain is not used to giving us response to that, because we've repeated something so many times that it just comes automatically to us. So likewise here, when our parents are doing something over and over again, asking, hey, don't do this, hey, don't do this, don't do this, they're actually wiring our brain, and that's in the inner part of the brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, where all this, or the decision making and the emotion regulation and all that takes place. That's where the results are actually taking place, and you see a lot of children get better with time. So why is it that you are expecting opposite of that? Is because when parents don't do that appropriately, when you get physical and when you really get angry into rage sometimes, then the results that we just spoke about will not happen. It'll be the exact opposite, which is what you were expecting. The child loses focus, gets distracted, will spend more time doing wrong things, will overthink and all of that. So you need to understand how this research can be, the findings of this research can be implemented in life. And the message for parents is learn to be, look, also I don't blame the parents too much, simply because, you go to a school or a college to get graduated in, let's say, business management, and you get a job as a management intern, and you become a manager. So there's a certain process to it. But parenting, there's no structured courses, there's no learning, you just kind of explore. So whatever you explore, you believe you're a PhD in that. And unfortunately, you can't be there. You need to have awareness, and you need to constantly challenge yourself and get there.
When I saw that study that you cited, I was just like, it actually opened me up in a way where I was just like, oh, okay. So when my mom or my dad are saying these things over and over again, it's actually I could take it in a different way.
Yeah.
Like I could actually receive it in a different way.
Yeah.
You know, and I think sometimes as children, and again, I say children broadly, right? Like you can be 80 and still be a child because you have parents, even if they're gone. You still have parents. You're still interacting with them in your subconscious, in your system all the time, right? And so it's that like piece around seeing them differently, to relate to them differently than just from the pain that you might have, or even just being like, oh, they're perfect. You know, they did their job. I respect them. That's it. Even though underneath that there's pain. And do you see that often?
It's an interesting point. Now, what we're trying to bring about now is that from a perspective of a young adult, how do you see your parents? What do you do? How do you deal with them? So complex again in terms of how every person has his experiences and how he's going to react. Some children have very bad childhood, being hit, being abused. So they have different experiences, but that I'm not saying majority of them go through that. So let's talk about a decent majority of people who've had a decent childhood and yet they have a problem with their parents. And how do they deal with that? So you need to understand first things first is that your parents, like I just said, they haven't gone through any formal education on how to be a good parent. So you have a certain expectation from your parent. You want the parent to be of a certain style, certain approach while dealing with you and all of that. That's just not everybody can get there. Yeah. Look, I mean, because I'm into this field of psychology, I can date my children and I can have fun with them. We can talk more about that later. But that's me, right? But that's not what all parents can do. But if children understand that all parents really have given them so much, they should be filled with gratitude. And from the space of gratitude, there should also be awareness that, hey, this is the best they can be. This is all that they know. And then they need to understand they are also going through their own life's challenges, their own problems. Could be financial, could be physical, could be emotional. There could be so many phases of life that human beings go through. Sometimes even if you wish to be at your best, you can't be. Like, for example, if you believe in astrology, then you can go through Sade Sati, you can go through Rahu time, and it's so difficult. So I think we need to create that ecosystem of constant awareness, not just from parents to children, but children to parents as well, and which is why I thrive on the whole ecosystem piece.
Yeah.
And I think then children get to understand that eventually what our parents want from us is they just want us to be happy. They want us to be at our best. They don't want anything back from us, not our money, not our bungalow, not anything at all. But it's just the emotions that needs to be understood properly for us to be in what I call the high-performing zone all the time in relationships as well.
Yeah, okay. I want to talk about that high-performing zone because I often feel like there's an expectation, especially for Desis, an expectation of the children to understand the parents more than the parents to understand the child, right? And so the child will often be like, okay, I know I'm supposed to respect my parents and they've done the best that they could, but they're harboring a lot of pain.
Yeah, that's because it comes from the concept of obligations, right? Like they've done so much for me, so I'm obliged to. No, that's not how relationships work, right? Yeah. The child can turn around and say, who asked you to bring me into this world, right? So, so we don't want to get into, that element in relationships. I think, I'm a big fan of Darshan, Gyan, Charitra. You just need to know what is it that you're really seeking. Darshan, you want happiness. Gyan, just get that knowledge in place. Action, just walk on that path. I think if we do that, we're fine. Why do people, not just in a family, a parent says, oh, you are supposed to do this for me because I've done that for you. These are like transactions. Relationships are not built on transactions. They're built on connections. And connections is just a part and process of growing. That's how you do it when you're fully present from your heart to the other person unconditionally. That's when it happens. But I don't want to give you the high level response and then leave it here. But what is it that parents and children must really understand in terms of who does what for each other? I'll give a tool, maybe it'll be easier. So every time you have a conflict, you need to ask yourself, what's the ultimate purpose of my life? What is the ultimate purpose of this relationship? What's the ultimate purpose of this conversation itself? And if it is happiness, then ask yourself, am I doing something which is not going to give me happiness? If the answer is yes, and you still don't know how to deal with it, well, that's the first step which tells you that you need to work on yourself.
Yeah.
So I think if we start from that point, we should be good.
Yeah, that's a good frame. Like, what? Say the question again. What is the?
What's the purpose of your life? What's the purpose of we being together as a relationship? What's the purpose of this conversation?
Yeah, and I often also say, like, what is it that I really want in this connection as well? You know, like.
Yeah, but just pause there for a second.
Yeah.
So most of us, if I ask this question again, what is the purpose of this conversation? They will say the purpose of this conversation is to solve a problem. But actually, the purpose of this conversation is for me to prove that I'm right. You know?
Yes, that's actually the purpose.
Yeah. So see, it's
so
interesting.
coming back to intention.
Hold, hang in there for a second. So let's say I'm right, you're wrong. I win, you lose. You know, that's really what the game is, right? So if I'm right and you're wrong, I win and you lose, then you have a certain price to pay for that.
Yeah.
So even if I win and you lose, we're losing connection. We're losing a peace of mind. Congratulations, you won. But hey, you don't have a trophy, you only have suffering. So what are you trading this for? So I think that maturity has to come in. I can only come with deep work.
Yeah. That understanding and awareness of like how much you're trying to be right all the time, which then takes you out of actually understanding your own intention deep down, and then somebody else's intention or what they're trying to also do for you too. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not who's right, who's wrong, what's right, what's wrong. It's just what are we seeking? It's a big quest. I mean, I can say it on this podcast and I can, sound like a guy who knows it all. I also mess up. But look, you will continuously keep messing up in spite of all your awareness because this brain's working so quick. The ability to bounce back quickest and in the right manner is where the crux of the matter is. Look, we need to give our audiences some tools. What do you do? Like, okay, fine, come go do my training program, my coaching. No, that's not what we're talking about. There are tools. You can use those tools. Breathing tool, timeout tool, empathy tool, journaling tool. There are so many tools that you have to keep using to get to where you want to go. Don't expect miracles to happen. Don't expect time's going to change things. Don't say my karma is going to change. You need to constantly keep working on yourself. Sometimes it's good to get perspectives from outside, which is what coaching can do, but eventually it will never happen unless you have your own internal quest and you keep working on yourself. The best way, of course, is meditation, but you need to explore. You
were sharing that you have been doing this thing called dating your daughter.
Yeah.
And can you share with me how that came about and what was your intention? And I'm curious how she's responded.
Yeah, you see, for me, relationships is everything. I'll trade off relationship for money and for everything materialistic. And that's how I am wired. I'm not saying everybody is going to be wired like that. This is me. And for me, every relationship matters. For me, family matters most. Family first all the time. Like there's nothing. And anybody who works in my organization, I tell them family first.
Can you explain family first?
Yeah. So you see, when you talk about the dynamics of human beings, Swapar, if I take you back, Swa is you. And then Par. So Par is everybody else. But who's the first in your circle of influence? Your family.
Yeah.
So, of course, self first. But then if you go beyond the self, it's family first. So all the good you do, they're the beneficiary of that. All the bad you do, they're the one who suffers. And then, of course, your work and then the society. A lot of us have messed this whole pyramid up. We put society first sometimes. We put work first. Oh my God. Work. How many of us are making that mistake? So you put your work first and then you put your family, and then you put yourself and then your society. It doesn't work like that. These are universal laws. It's not Rahul Kapoor creation. It works just like that. You first, family. So you, family, work, and then people say, if I'm going to keep work as number 3, will I thrive there? Will I be able to achieve what I want to achieve? Of course you can. You'll do more because you're at peace with yourself, you're at peace with your family. All the energy that you're actually wasting otherwise now becomes your power, and you use it the way you want to. You'll only grow 10 times. I can tell you that 100 times. So that's one.
When you have that foundation.
Yeah, because eventually you're a being of whatever you do is a product of your energy. Now, how you use that energy really determines how you're going to achieve success. Yeah. So that's one piece that I'd like to clarify. What is it that you asked me just before this? You wanted to know about the dynamics of
family first.
Family first.
Before
right?
I said that, the daughter.
Yeah. So the date with daughter actually comes from that philosophy. So I'm very present to every relationship in my life, but my children, of course. So let me give an example, and then I'll build up this date with daughters thing.
Yeah.
So I was doing this little work. I was working on a project for my US project 2 years ago. Very, very important project, massive. And while I was doing this, I was doing research and I was building a proposal. And with all that was going on there, I was in the last 20, 30 minutes of packaging that entire piece up, and my daughter walks in and she's like, "Dad, I want to talk to you." And I just said, "Not now." And she's okay, and she shut the door and she left. And I'm like, "Hey, what did I just do?" And then I got up, I called her in, I said, "Hey, sorry, I was not present to you, and I'm still not present to you. I'm in the middle of something very important. Is it possible that I can spend a few minutes and conclude that and come back to you?" And she said, "Yeah, of course, Dad, because we speak that language in the house. Okay, I'm not present, I'm absent." So I told her that. So I was not present. I was present, absent. And then when I completed this task and I went to her and I asked her what happened, she's like, "Dad, I want to share something with you." I said, "What?" And she said, "You know this, I'm terrible in math." I said, "Yeah, I know you are." She's like, "I just got my results." I'm like, "Don't tell me." She's like, "Yeah, I got 49 on 50. Highest ever." And we both celebrated. So you see, this is how you become present to small situations. Now, what is this date with daughter? Or I also call it date in daughter-in-love. So I'll explain both of them to you. So when my daughter turned 13, both my daughters, I was the first date by choice. I was present to the fact that turning 13 and before, of course they're going to date someone. I wanted to be that date. So isn't that cool? But you know what? I also transitioned from being a father to a friend. And not a boyfriend, but a friend.
Yeah.
And we have memories forever till she lives and I live.
How did you do that becoming a friend thing? Because it's that you said it easily.
Yeah.
Because I know you've done so much work on yourself, but it's like it's not a flip of a switch, is it?
Yeah, it isn't. So you need to be present. So my dad had a great relationship with me. He was a good friend of mine. He really nurtured me, shaped me, transformed me to be who I am. Of course, he passed away 26 years ago, but I still have memories. I've written a book called Dad and I. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy of that right now, which is basically real life stories of what me and my dad and what I learned from him about spirituality, about money, about relationships and all of that. I've captured all of that because I had those memories of my dad. Plus, when I was young, I was given the freedom to explore. Like I had a girlfriend when I was young. I broke up and I had another girlfriend. I broke up and I smoked and I drank and I made mistakes and I flunked even being a rank student. But the way my dad dealt with me was so phenomenal that it just came to me naturally that I want to be my kids' best friends. And I think by doing that, by dating my daughters, I always gain an access into their lives. Like I just take off for 3 days with one of my daughter. I just came from a cruise recently. The other one, we went to Cochin. And what I do is I'm just with them. We play, we have fun together. We go in the same jacuzzi and we have our... So what happens when you're in that phase with the child is that they open up to you. Yeah. Because you are being a friend. I want to be relevant. I like looking young and I'll dress up this way. And I know when my daughters, when I go to the school or college, they say, "Hey, is this your brother?" It's like, "No, my dad." "Your dad." So, that's how you kind of connect with your child. You can go date with them. You can have conversations with them. And then you would get to know that who are they really dating? Do they have a boyfriend? And it's okay to have a boyfriend. What's wrong? I mean, you might say, "Oh, no, my culture doesn't allow me. Oh, my value system doesn't allow me." But hey, that biological need of the child and the natural instinct is making the child do it. So accept it. It's better to know, accept, and then give the values so that the child doesn't cross the boundary than to say, no, and create more resistance and you suffer, they suffer. So that's how the date with daughter concept came up. I date my mother. I took my mother out to Dubai for a 4-day trip, just me and my mother. And when I was at the immigration, somebody asked me, "Who's this?" And I said, "She's my girlfriend." She's like, "She looks so old." Like, "Yeah, that's my mother girlfriend." So it's date with mother, date with daughter, date with daughter-in-love, not daughter-in-law. We say daughter-in-law. What do you mean by law? Did you sign an agreement when you got married? I mean, you got a child married to this girl? So what's this daughter-in-law? It's love, daughter-in-love, brother-in-love, sister-in-love. So that's what I tell, father-in-laws that, hey, take your daughter-in-love out for shopping, for a movie, spend time. Because, when you are out with love as the key, you build relationships. You don't create transactions.
Yeah. And how has your daughter received it? Like, I think you said you asked her, like, what impact has that had on her?
I was coming just now for this podcast, and I gave her a call and said, hey, I'm going for this podcast. And if we talk about youngsters, what do you think you want me to speak about? Can you tell me all good things that I do and the not so good things that I do? And she said that, what I like about you is that you're open to me, you listen to me, you provide a atmosphere where I feel that I'm not judged, I feel safe, I feel secure, all of that. And what is it that you don't like about me? Like, you sometimes really want me to be like you. So I'm like, no, don't be like me, but be the better version of you.
Yeah. Well, what I think is beautiful about that also is because, especially as younger women, to have that stronger male role model showing them what presence looks like, what safety looks like, what engaging with you looks like. And that becomes the bar, that becomes the bar that they then live into, which I think is so important.
It's good and bad as well, actually. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because, when you get married, some part of you is looking for a man that you can live with, but another part of you is looking for, that's of course,
Your
if
dad.
you had good relationship with your dad, then you're looking for a dad in that man too. Like one element, you want someone who's going to be protective, giving you unconditional love, so on and so forth, which is good. But sometimes it interferes, because then whenever you have a problem with your spouse, that's your husband in this case, subconsciously your brain goes back to say, hey, my dad was not like this. And then you're not aware of this, right? So you're always constantly seeking the man who's of a certain standard, of a certain, value system. And back there, you're actually looking for a dad in him. So I keep telling people in my session where I talk about relationships, the art of us. So what is the art of us? The art of us is the two of us come together to celebrate our differences and yet get connected with our commonalities. And you experience marriage, you experience the spiritual connect, and you should be able to acknowledge that I'm looking for a man who plays various roles for me. One of the role also is that of a parent. And then if she understands and she's aware and she expresses that to the man, it becomes so much more easier for the man to fulfill that need. Otherwise, he's always wondering, hey, I'm doing everything and you still don't feel connected. What's wrong? So it's very important, these dynamics. Everything revolves around two things: awareness and presence.
Awareness and presence. Yeah. And I think that for young women, when you have everything what you said is totally accurate, right? When you have that sort of standard, it helps you to not be okay with the lack of presence from somebody, right? You won't handle or tolerate being ignored or being dismissed, things like that happen a lot for women, And so in that way it's good. And you're also right. The other side of it is that you also don't want to then be in a committed relationship or in marriage where you're then comparing your partner to your father, because they're on I call it a pedestal, you know?
But you need to know it's all happening subconsciously.
Yeah.
Not even present. So that makes it even more hard.
Yeah.
So I love these dynamics of family. We explored so much today. We spoke about ourselves and ourselves in context with our family and the young adult in the house and marriages, parents. And just this dynamics are so beautiful. We may have the maximum problems at home with people.
Yeah.
And yet those people matter most. Sometimes we are away from them in our ego. Sometimes our anger drifts us apart. Sometimes our deceit and greed, especially with brothers, sisters. But eventually what I've learned in life is this, that these are all vices that is going to always stay in your brain: the anger, ego, deceit, greed. You'll have to learn that without these, you can't even experience human relationships. And with these, if you have the right tools, you can actually come out as complete when you leave this world and say, hey, I went there, I did my job. And in all the pluses and minuses, I still lived a life of awareness and presence. Not perfect life, but I still did. And I'm happy for having lived the way I did. And I'm so full of gratitude.
Yeah. Because there's ways to transcend, right? The ego, the vices. The tools help you transcend those moments. Do you agree or no?
Tools. It is tools, and it's always going to be tools. And the master tool for that is meditation. Now, meditation, not meditation of relaxation, which the world is experiencing right now, but the erstwhile meditation of purification, vipassana, for example. So I think that's where you kind of keep yourself, you keep purifying yourselves, you purify your thoughts, your emotions, then the vibrational level, and go deeper in the atomic level. And then you really know this, that you've been able to understand what causes you pain and pleasure, and then not be able to react from there, stay equanimous, and then live a good life. That's another quest. And I encourage, in fact, in my programs, everybody goes through meditation. It's a part and parcel of life. Prayer, meditation is just so important. Silence, solitude. I promote that quite a bit. My family does that. All my kids, my family, everybody's gone through Vipassana. In fact, Diksha was the youngest in the world, I can say. When she was 13, she did her first course of 7 days. Dia has done that. Not that I force them to do it every day. It's their choice. I've already sowed the seed, and I'll see how it goes from here.
What change did you see in her after the 7 days?
So interestingly, my quest for Vipassana started with my daughter's note when she was 6 years. That's my younger one, Diksha. She wrote a note for me. This is when I was in the US doing my first tour. I was working with the president of India, Dr. Abdul Kalam. I was teaching at IIM Bangalore. I was writing for Times of India. I was working at IPL. I was like the man of the moment, right? And she wrote a note for me, and the note, I still have that note, and maybe I'll send a picture of that for you. She said, "I love you, Papa, and you don't be angry." And that started my quest.
And you don't be angry?
Angry.
Why did you say that?
I was full of rage, perfectionist, wanted to run things like the way I wanted to, ran 3 companies, so many jobs, working 24/7, results-driven man. Everybody would like say, "Wow, Rahul Kapoor, oh my God." I was like drowned in my own glory of suffering, but I was thinking I was growing, until this note came to me, and I started my new journey of understanding anger. And when I gave Diksha an access into Vipassana, that was just 10 years later, and I had written a book on anger, which is going to soon be published. And she wrote a poem for me 10 years later on my 47th birthday. The book was ready 3 years ago. I haven't yet published because I think I'm not fully done yet before the book comes out. And she wrote in a poem saying how much transformation she saw in me. And I wanted to give her the same gift. And that's how, of course, she was introduced to Vipassana. She could not go earlier because she had to be 13 at least.
Yeah.
And she went through it 3 years ago. And now she's a teenager. She's rebellious. So obviously anger is also, all emotions are playing in her mind and body as well. But what I'm happy about is that she has an access. She has a tool. She can bounce back faster than me or anybody else, because I got the access only when I was like in my 30s and 40s, late 40s. She got it so early. Yeah, so.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, it just sounds like she was inspired by you as well, right? Like to see you transforming in front of her eyes with her, with others. Like then the child also wants to try to figure that out for themselves, understand it for themselves.
We inspire each other every day.
Yeah.
So I've built an ecosystem like that. I think all parents should do, is that we all get inspired from each other. I mean, this T-shirt I'm wearing, this brand, I'm not used to this brand. This is not me. But my daughter she introduced me to H&M. And why not Zara? H&M is slightly less expensive. So my daughters have that eye that, hey, if I want to buy something from Zara, I can go there, I can buy from H&M as well. Not promoting a brand, but I just wanted you to know this, that I started to pick up clothes that I feel my children would have picked up for me. We go shopping, they pick things for me, and then they say, "Dad, I want to steal this one day." And I say, "Yeah." And sometimes they wear my clothes and go out. So, that's how you inspire each other in small things. They cook for me, I cook for them. And I'm a pretty horrible cook, but we still do it together. And I'm okay with my children going wrong. I love it when they make mistakes. I love it when I have to go to Diksha's room or Dia's room and clean the cupboards. Like even now, it just gives me joy. I don't go out with frustration. Earlier, before I had an access to my own brain, I would get angry with them. Now I go with love, joy. I clean the whole room. I leave a small note. I love you. Please keep the room messy.
Yeah. Please keep it messy.
Yeah, so I can come back and do this
I was like, did I hear you wrong?
Yeah. Isn't that a joy? And then the children start understanding. No, Dad, it's okay.
I know. And what I'm hearing is like just so much flexibility in your way of being. It's taken time, work, for sure.
Yeah.
So let's end on this. What would be a vision that you have for families? Because in families, there's always issues. There's never not issues.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what kind of family you came from. Doesn't matter if you're raised by, one parent, 2 parents, many parents, extended family, right? What would be your vision for families?
I always wonder that English is such a poor language. Sometimes the words don't have depth.
It's true.
But the word family has so much of depth in it. Family, father and mother, I love you. I mean, one of the most powerful words. And I keep telling people that, listen, you'll get, if you believe in life after death, you're going to get parents in every birth, but you may not get the same parents in every birth. And eventually they've brought you into this world. They've given you everything that you have. The least you can do is to have gratitude. Gratitude first, love later. Gratitude. I think that's one of the things that I really promote to people. However good, bad, ugly your relationship could be, it's because of the circumstances of life and the 4 things I told you. So people are driven by that, unless, of course, you have the awareness and you can shift that. So start from there. That's one of the perspectives I talk about. Second is, look at Hindi or Sanskrit, such powerful languages. They have so much of depth in every word. Like kshan. Kshan means what? Like the smallest part of the second is kshan. Like so much of power in the word.
The smallest, say that again.
The smallest part of the second.
Of the second?
Yeah, if you take a second and you break it down.
Got it.
The smallest part is called kshan. Yeah, and it's some beautiful content around that, but not for today. But in Hindi or Sanskrit, there's one word which I feel is so weak, and that's parivar. I mean, translation of family in Hindi is parivar. Break it down, is parivar. Var as in attack. Parivar. So I was thinking in one of my meditation, you just go through the thought, you don't sit to think, but you just get a thought and said, why parivar? What is the purpose of being in a family? Pyar. So why can't we replace the word var with pyar? So it becomes pari-pyar.
You're good on this wordplay, but it makes a difference.
Huge. It's not just a wordplay, because the moment you use those words creates what? Energy. Energy creates what? Emotions. Emotion creates what? Actions. So it's such a beautiful world. It's such a beautiful word. Pari-pyar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So English word family, father and mother, I love you. So love there. Pari-pyar, love here. And I think that's what the quest is all about. If you ask me to summarize, before you ask me a concluding question, look, we're all spiritual beings. We come into this world to balance our accounts from the previous birth. That is, if you believe in life after death. And for those who don't believe, that's fine. It still holds good. We come in here to complete with each other. What we do is exactly the opposite. And we add so much of stress and pressure and suffering that we go back with a lot more to, then come back one more time to clear the accounts. So I think if we can understand that we're not here for our materialistic transactions, we are here for our spiritual completion. And if human beings can do that, I think it'll be an amazing thing. Having said that, you perhaps should ask me a question. Do you get fight? Do you get angry? Do you shout? Do you scream? And the answer is yes to all of that. The question should be, how quickly can you bounce back, and what emotions are you left with? And I can easily tell you this, that every emotion of mine that always ends with love, compassion, gratitude, joy for the other person, for myself. Metta, as we call it. And I'm so glad that the universe, my parents, my teachers, my mentors, gurus have guided me, coached me, blessed me to be able to experience all of this, that I can speak about it so confidently on this podcast.
That's amazing, because I think you're just so connected to wanting to stay in that connection of love, right? You're so connected to wanting to stay in the connection of love, and that guides you. And I think that when we stay in that level of connection to love, it guides us. And when we, like you just said, we get transactional with it, then there's breaks. There's breaks inside of us. There's breaks in our relationships also.
Yeah, but then how does this flow? It flows only when you do inner work. We're on yourself. So for those of you who are listening or watching this, my message is stop focusing on what the other person should do or not do. Start with yourself. Because when you start with yourself and you get competent, you will still have to encounter the do's and don'ts of the other person. You will still get into attacks and blames, but you'll bounce back faster and you'll be more peaceful. You'll know when to say, okay, this is where I stop, this is where I walk out, this is where I take a break, this is where I journal, this is where I reconnect, this is how I go back. And boy, life can be so different.
Yeah, it can be very different. It's so true. Because you're still going to have all those emotions. You're still going to go through being a human, but how you bounce back.
Being human being or human doing?
Human doing.
So all of us into this do. I do this. I make the bed, I cook the food, I go out, I earn money. I'm doing, just be human being. And human being means what? Quest to experience joy, happiness. Happens through what? Happens through forgiveness, compassion, giving, filling yourself with gratitude. So be a good human being. You will be a good person in the family. You will be a good person for the society and this world. And you would have experienced bliss in this one life.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I feel like I learned a lot, and I'm sure so many people watching got so much wisdom. Even if you just take away the change of pari pyar and family and how you positioned those two things, it's beautiful.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me over. And for all those who are watching this, what's the best gift anybody can give to the other person? It's the gift of knowledge, pure knowledge without expectations. And I think that's why I came here today. And I hope that each one of you can take this back, live a good life. Grateful to you that you called me today.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope you loved this episode of Desi Wisdom. Please leave a comment below telling me if you liked it, if you didn't like it, what you would have wanted more of. It really helps me refine this podcast to give you exactly what you want. I will be reading every comment and responding. Also, I know this is the last thing that you're going to want to be doing, but if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. When you hit that subscribe button, you'll be notified of the episodes that come out every single Tuesday. So hit that subscribe button. And if you're ready to binge another episode of Desi Wisdom, take a look at this one. It's a good one.